Three poor young men built a motorcycle out of scrap metal, never realizing they were about to change an era. First, they stole discarded parts from a factory and built an engine, then mounted it onto a bicycle frame. Next, they fitted scavenged rubber tires and finally attached a handlebar welded from waste iron. The world's first Harley-Davidson motorcycle was born, but whether it could actually start or not, the three of them were still uncertain. Walter decided to test ride it immediately. The roar of the engine was deafening, shattering the morning silence and drawing a curious crowd. After speeding through the streets and alleys, Walter rushed toward the open fields outside town. Under the blue sky and green shade, he accelerated freely, feeling the wind howl past his ears and the thrill of dirt flying beneath the wheels. Only when the fuel tank ran dry did he reluctantly push the motorcycle back home. Staring at the bike assembled entirely from secondhand parts, Walter's eyes lit up with a spark he had never felt before. He quickly told his cousin Arthur and his friend Harley that if they could make it more powerful, this kind of bike could sell across America. But Harley immediately rejected the idea, saying that increasing the power would require a lot more money. They were already broke and didn't have a single penny to spare.
That's all I got. They allowed me to sell for 15 cents an acre.
Even with money, they would still face enormous challenges, because in larger cities, other companies were already selling similar products. Reality's thorns always pierced the sails of dreams. Just as they were filled with excitement for their invention, Harley unexpectedly received a college admission letter. In 1903, being accepted into a university meant a chance to change one's fate. But when Harley told Arthur and Walter, Walter exploded with anger.
Well, figure out I put all my money into this, and our engineer is walking out on us? We committed to this, Bill. All of us. All of us.
The three parted on bad terms and their team faced its first real crisis. Even worse, their new motorcycle design still had a serious problem. The carburetor was supplying too much fuel, making the engine extremely unstable. To solve the issue, Arthur turned to his old boss at the factory where he used to work. But he didn't know that his former boss had already signed an exclusive deal with Indian Motorcycles, meaning he would never allow another brand to compete for market share. So the boss deliberately sold him a faulty carburetor. That despicable act nearly destroyed the only prototype they had. One day, the owner of Indian Motorcycles, Hendy, decided to host a dirt bike race in town, promising a huge reward for the winner. Riders from all over came to sign up. Walter pushed their newly built motorcycle to the event. He wanted to show off its performance, but as soon as he twisted the throttle, the engine blew up and caught fire. Their rival's sabotage turned Harley's first public appearance into a city-wide joke, but that humiliating failure taught them something crucial. Without professional technical help, they could never succeed on their own. They needed to find an engineer who truly understood machines. After much thought, Walter approached Eddie, a mechanic working for Hendy, and secretly offered him a higher salary to join them. Eddie had long despised his greedy and harsh boss, so he gladly accepted. With Eddie's help, the carburetor problem was soon fixed. But during testing, new issues quickly appeared. They discovered that if the engine ran for more than 20 minutes, it would leak all its oil. At that very moment, Arthur, who handled sales, somehow managed to attract their first potential customer. Seeing the oil dripping from the motorcycle, he quickly turned his body to block the leak and led the buyer to inspect the other side instead. Unaware of the problem, the buyer paid a $50 deposit. Just like that, they completed their first deal. But the oil leak still had to be fixed before delivery. Out of options, they turned to Harley for help. To their disappointment, Harley refused. He explained that he was at a critical point in his studies and didn't have time for anything else. Besides, he had promised his classmates that after graduation, he would work for their family's automobile company. Arthur was furious, but Walter remained calm because he understood Harley's situation. Coming from a poor family, Harley had to support his household and take care of his sick brother, and a stable corporate job seemed like the safest choice. Without Harley's help, Arthur and Walter could only rely on Eddie. Soon, the day of the big race arrived. Walter rode their modified motorcycle into the arena, and the roaring engine instantly drew everyone's attention. Hendy immediately grew wary. This might be their strongest competitor. Just before the race began, Hendy used his power as organizer to disqualify Walter, claiming the bike was overweight. Arthur angrily stepped forward to argue. But since Hendy controlled the event, his word was law, and he could invent endless excuses to keep them out. It was clear that the race, though dressed in fairness, had been rigged from the start. Its real purpose was to promote the Indian brand. As the argument dragged on, Harley, standing nearby, suddenly gestured to Walter. Walter instantly understood and willingly left the track, but he wasn't giving up. He had found another way. When the starting gun fired, Walter sped off outside the racetrack, his tires grinding against gravel and kicking up clouds of dust. Two races now unfolded side by side. Inside the arena, polished brand-name bikes roared around the circuit. Outside, a raw iron beast tore through rough terrain. Even though the outer path was longer and rougher, Walter stayed neck and neck with the leading riders. But if he stayed outside the track, even winning would be meaningless. So, on the final stretch before the finish line, Walter accelerated with all his might, smashed through the fence, and charged back onto the track. With sheer power, his motorcycle left every rival far behind. Walter crossed the finish line first, in overwhelming victory. Harley's first public appearance amazed everyone in the crowd. At the same time, it sent a message to every competitor that rules might restrict the track, but nothing could ever tame the wild spirit of Harley-Davidson. They had just broken into the market in the most savage way possible. After the race, a businessman named C.H. Lang approached Arthur and handed him his business card. Seeing a potential client, Arthur immediately tried to boast and raise his worth. But how could such clumsy acting fool an experienced businessman?
Your coat is a hand-me-down, your shoes are covered in grease, and you have no card. I believe this company you speak of is largely fiction.
Well, our bike is real.
However, C.H. Lang still decided to invest $1,000 because he keenly sensed the business potential behind their motorcycles. When Arthur got home, he took out the enormous check. The brothers were thrilled beyond words. It was their first investment, the very first capital that officially launched their dream. Soon, they began building a proper factory. At the same time, they came up with many ideas for a new generation of motorcycles. Because during the race, the heavy bodywork had exposed a weakness. Arthur realized that if they could reduce the weight without losing power, the motorcycle's speed could rise to a whole new level. Unfortunately, both he and Eddie knew almost nothing about advanced engine technology. Meanwhile, Harley received an offer from the Ford Motor Company just as he was about to graduate. For the first time, he hesitated. When he saw that his motorcycle design was no less impressive than those of big-name brands, the seed of his dream began to sprout again. He quickly told his father about it, but his father insisted that joining a major company with a stable, high-paying job was the safest path. Unable to withstand the pressure from his parents, Harley reluctantly agreed. As his pen touched the paper, he signed not only a contract, but also the end of his last tie to his dream. Before graduation, Harley went to say goodbye to Arthur and Walter. To his surprise, this time they didn't blame him. Hearing their kind words and looking at the motorcycle he had built with his own hands, Harley felt his heart waver once more. He asked if he could buy that first motorcycle as a keepsake. Sensing his hesitation, Arthur offered him another chance. He told Harley that no matter where he went, this brand would always belong to him too. And the company name had already been chosen. It would be called Harley-Davidson. Those words touched Harley deeply. He suddenly realized that true regret isn't failing to become someone else's pride. It's not daring to become who you dream of being. When he returned home, Harley tore up the contract right in front of his shocked parents. In that moment, he destroyed a promise of stability but ignited a fire of self-belief. With Harley back, the oil leak problem was finally solved, and in the following years, he drew the blueprint for the world's first V-twin engine. None of them could have imagined that this design would one day shock the world and make Harley-Davidson the motorcycle of choice for American police. However, even though Harley's performance far surpassed its competitors, the company still struggled to open the market. The three men grew anxious. Until one evening, during a party, investor C.H. Lang said something that instantly enlightened them. Soon after, they signed up for the grueling jungle race. The rules were extremely harsh. Riders had to complete 3 mountain laps without refueling or rest, changing riders only at the end of each lap. If a motorcycle broke down mid-race, it was immediately disqualified. It was not only a test of riding skill, but also the ultimate challenge for any machine. But the race, though appearing fair, had no real limits. Because nothing restrained the rider's behavior, most would stop at nothing to win. During the race through the jungle, an Indian motorcycle rider deliberately rammed Walter, slamming his foot against a rock. Walter gritted his teeth through the pain and finished the first lap. According to their plan, if a rider was injured, Eddie would take over for the second lap. But furious at being sabotaged, Walter refused to quit. Ignoring his teammates' pleas, he took a swig of whiskey and set off again. That action deeply disappointed Eddie and planted the seed for the tragedy that would follow. During the second lap, Walter and the Indian rider clashed fiercely. They collided again, sending Walter flying off the track. Yet even then, he refused to give up. With Harley's powerful engine driving him, he caught up once more on the third lap. This time, he fought back, kicking his rival hard and sending him tumbling several meters away. The race had turned into a brutal brawl. Meanwhile, the businessmen waiting at the finish line grew restless. Hendy, desperate to protect his company's dominance, announced that any dealer who signed an Indian motorcycle contract before the race ended would receive extra profit bonuses. At that moment, nearly every dealer signed without hesitation. As a result, the outcome of the race no longer mattered. Although Walter crossed the finish line first, Harley-Davidson still lost commercially. What's even more outrageous is that Hendy shamelessly mocked them afterward. An enraged Walter punched Hendy in front of everyone. His outburst was soon picked up by the press, and major newspapers sensationalized the story. The Harley brand completely lost its public image, and most dealers began to distance themselves from them. The team erupted into fierce arguments, and the tension soon escalated into a physical fight. It wasn't until the Davidson brothers' mother stepped in that the chaos finally calmed down. Her words suddenly made them realize just how childish their behavior had been. They all couldn't help but laugh at the same time. This brawl didn't tear them apart. It actually brought them closer together. However, Harley's future was still uncertain, and the sales problem remained unsolved. At that critical moment, a mysterious businessman showed up with a proposal. He suggested that the Harley team join an upcoming race he was organizing. After intense discussion, everyone except Walter and Eddie agreed that the race was far too dangerous. The track was made of wooden planks tilted at a 60-degree angle, and riders had to maintain speeds above 80 kilometers per hour just to stay upright. Even worse, the race had one brutal rule: motorcycles were not allowed to have brakes. Arthur believed this was no different from suicide. Harley also felt it went against the purpose of why they started building motorcycles in the first place, but Walter kept insisting. He believed that if they could win such a legendary race, Harley-Davidson would become famous overnight. Seeing his determination, Eddie volunteered to take his place, yet Walter still insisted on racing himself. Eddie was visibly upset. But Walter wasn't being selfish or trying to steal the spotlight. He just didn't want his friend to take the risk. On race day, Walter secretly entered despite everyone's objections. Beside him was Eddie, riding an Indian motorcycle. Walter didn't blame him for leaving because they both knew how deep Eddie's love for motorcycles ran. As the flag dropped, the race officially began. Engines roared as every rider gunned for maximum speed on the steep curves, but unfamiliar with the track, two riders collided at the very first turn. Watching from the stands, Arthur and Harley were filled with worry for Walter and Eddie's safety. The race grew more intense with every lap. The Indian rider stayed in the lead. Eddie and Walter followed closely behind. It was all part of Walter's plan. He intended to adapt to the track and make his move on the final lap. But near the end of the second lap, disaster struck. One rider's engine exploded, bursting into flames and sending him crashing onto the track. Two staff members rushed in to help. The leading rider had a clear view and swerved away just in time. But Eddie, following closely behind, panicked at the sudden obstacle. He turned too sharply, unable to slow down, and slammed violently into the guardrail. The race was immediately stopped. Arthur and Harley sprinted onto the track. Walter ran over from the distance, but Eddie was already lying lifeless in a pool of blood. At that moment, Walter was consumed by guilt. If he hadn't insisted on competing, maybe none of this would have happened. After the race, the group made a monumental decision. To honor Eddie's memory and protect other riders, they published a statement in the newspaper. The Harley-Arthur Company would permanently withdraw from all such dangerous competitions and strongly condemn these reckless, break-free races. As a result, their already low sales plummeted even further, and the remaining dealers pulled their support. The company stood on the brink of bankruptcy. Determined to survive, the three began exploring new directions for the business. Arthur came up with a creative idea: to form motorcycle clubs, letting word of mouth spread through passionate riders. He encouraged customers to race Harley bikes in legitimate competitions to raise brand awareness. Meanwhile, Harley designed new models specifically for women, opening an entirely new market. Thanks to these innovations, the Harley-Arthur Company managed to survive in a brutal industry. But just a year later, their old rival, Hendy, owner of Indian motorcycles, announced his retirement. Unfortunately, this was not good news. His replacement had a reputation in the industry for being cunning and ruthless. Harley was about to face an even greater challenge. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. All three men were now married and settled. Their company had reached the peak of its success. The Harley brand was now as famous across America as Indian motorcycles. That same year, thanks to Harley's relentless research, the world's first V-twin engine was successfully born. Just when the three thought they had reached the peak of success, Harley-Davidson was hit with the greatest crisis since its founding. In 1914, the United States declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War I, and the government ordered all men under 30 to enlist. The factory instantly lost a large number of its skilled workers. Even worse, to ensure fuel for the military, the federal government issued a fuel restriction order, banning the use of gasoline in non-essential industries. It was a devastating blow to the entire automobile industry. Facing this crisis, Walter came up with a bold idea: Since civilian motorcycles were restricted, why not collaborate with the army to produce military models? But as soon as he suggested it, Harley strongly opposed the plan. His brother had been severely injured in the war, leaving him disabled. Harley couldn't stand the thought of his creation becoming a weapon of war. Yet without a deal with the military, there was no other option. The company would go bankrupt. Caught between conscience and survival, Harley poured his heart out to his brother. Deeply moved, Harley picked up his pen once again. He decided to design the most practical military motorcycle possible, one that could give every soldier on the battlefield a chance to come home. Meanwhile, Arthur and Walter went to negotiate directly with the army. There, they once again crossed paths with their old rival, Indian Motorcycles. After a detailed review of both companies, the military leaned toward the more established Indian brand, planning to order 25,000 bikes from them and only 15,000 from Harley. At that crucial moment, Arthur presented Harley's blueprint. The design's efficiency and innovation immediately caught the general's attention. Seeing his interest, Arthur seized the opportunity and proposed that Harley-Davidson could also establish a training academy for soldiers, offering free lessons on how to repair motorcycles in the field. The general was instantly impressed, because in war, such skills could mean the difference between life and death. He decided to place equal orders of 20,000 motorcycles with both companies and promised that whichever performed better would receive future contracts. After the meeting, Walter questioned Arthur's decision. Opening a training school would raise costs tremendously, bringing little to no profit, and with growing orders, they might even lose money. But Arthur told him to trust the plan. And just as Arthur predicted, Harley's military motorcycles performed brilliantly on the battlefield. They became the first machines to roll into the German capital. In November 1918, with Germany's surrender, World War I finally came to an end, and countless soldiers had grown attached to their Harley bikes. Some even visited the factory afterward just to express their gratitude. Every Harley motorcycle that crossed the battlefield carried not just soldiers, but lives. They never spoke, yet every roar of their engines brought comfort stronger than any command, because that sound meant hope. It meant home. Harley motorcycles gave every soldier standing on the edge of life and death a sense of trust, and in return, they earned the most heartfelt appreciation. In a short time, Harley's reputation soared, and sales skyrocketed to the top of the industry. This drove the owner of Indian Motorcycles into a rage. He bought every model Harley had on the market and ordered his engineers to dismantle and study them one by one. It didn't take long for them to uncover a massive flaw. Most Harley bikes used the same type of clutch, and that clutch, designed back in 1910, had never been patented. Now, Indian had registered it first. This meant Harley-Davidson not only had to pull its motorcycles off the market, but also faced enormous compensation claims. Their lawyer told them there was no way to win the lawsuit. The damages alone would reach $1 million. Faced with that impossible number, Harley offered to resign and take full responsibility so the company could survive, but Arthur immediately refused. The next morning, when they arrived at the factory, they were stunned to find that Walter had already sold all his assets to cover the fine. Arthur was furious and demanded to know why. Walter didn't explain. Instead, he led them to an old companion. It was the first motorcycle they had built together in 1903, crafted entirely from second-hand parts. Harley gently ran his hand over the rusted frame, his eyes welling with tears. Walter climbed on, kick-started the engine, and the familiar roar echoed through the workshop once again. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. They were no longer businessmen burdened by failure. They were the same dreamers they had once been. As the sound faded into silence, the three middle-aged men looked at each other. There were no broken entrepreneurs left, only young men ready to start over.
We start over from scratch. We don't need to be number one. It's about the machine. We're Harley-Davidson. We'll keep building motorcycles even if we have to do it in a shed.
Perhaps the greatest courage in life is not charging ahead through success, but finding the strength to return to where it all began after failure. To this day, Harley-Davidson has faced countless challenges and trials, yet its pursuit of freedom and dreams has never changed. Just as Walter once said in his youth, he wanted to build a motorcycle that could go anywhere in the world. The three of them turned passion into dreams and dreams into faith. Like everyone else, they faced hardship. They endured misunderstanding from family. They experienced the loss of friends. They saw their accounts run dry, and they suffered through mockery after every failure. But no matter how long the night, no matter how rough the road, they never let go of the handlebars of their dreams. Now, when a Harley-Davidson engine roars to life once more, it's no longer just the vibration of metal. It's the sound of every restless soul revving forward on their own road to freedom.